Hi, welcome to my daily video that I'm gonna do. I think I'm gonna do lots of videos on YouTube because I'm sobering up, and when you sober up, your brain works a little bit differently. So I'm more open to doing videos. Today's April 16th, 2020, 2:56 p.m. on a Thursday. So this video is about, it's kind of a continuation. I hope my fucking mom doesn't call and fuck up the video like she did yesterday, that stupid bitch. Actually, it's not her fault. She didn't know I was doing a video. That wasn't fair. But it was kind of yesterday's video was, and I'll just do a really quick synopsis. I predict we're about to enter into a phase of extreme, but I mean fucking extreme, maxed out creativity amongst all. All we have to do is there's two things. We have to teach these stupid rich kids who don't have to work to not try to make more money. Okay? If you get enough money where you don't have to work again your whole life, assuming you don't get all crazy and buy shit, you just kind of settle down in your parents' third bedroom or whatever, or you buy a little apartment somewhere and you just hunker down and you work. That's what you should be doing. You shouldn't be opening up a business and trying to make more money. That's the stupidest thing you could do. You need to take advantage of your strengths. Okay, that's what animals do. Do you ever see a gibbon swimming in the water? Do you ever see sharks climbing trees? No, you do what you're good at. Do you ever see a 6'8" black dude trying out for the gymnastics team? No, he does basketball. Little 4-foot people do the horse jockeying. That's human nature. And it goes the same with people. If you already have money, then use that talent to do something creative that only you can do with your spare time. Because spare time creates a certain power. You know, now having money can help you invest in starting a new business. So I guess that's a power, but only if you really have an entrepreneurial idea, not just to make money. Because what I was saying yesterday is UBI is going to create, as soon as somebody don't have to work, you can just sit down and you can create and you can learn, and not even just create, just follow the pattern, like follow the path and just perfect. That's what I'm setting up on my website. I want to set up a system where people do the biweekly history test, where you just share how much you know, general knowledge, which is terrifying for people because it makes you look like an idiot, you know? Like the smartest person in the world, if you ask them a series of wrong questions, they're going to look dumb because we haven't had the time to really learn everything yet, but we're getting there, and we're getting there soon. So anyways, we're about to get to a part of extreme creativity and original thought. And, that's why people need to stay open-minded and not get judgmental. Like if you see somebody jumping around in their underwear or something, not get all freaked out and tell them that they have to delete their video, or if they say cuss words, they have to delete their video. Just let people run wild. But then that creates a dilemma. If you let people run wild like monkeys, then what's going to stop people from becoming like mean and disrespectful? And how do you maintain order in society? Because there's lots of lower IQ people out there who don't get it, and they're going to see people around them being super creative, and then they'll think that, and then they'll see people like maybe swearing and dancing around naked or whatever, and they'll think that that's offensive, and they're trying to be offensive, and then they'll do something that actually is offensive, like invade people's space and stuff like that, in all sorts of ways. So how do you maintain civility in society, yet at the same time foster extreme creativity, which is just about to come as soon as we get the UBI? Because all these people won't have to be slaves, Like imagine how much hidden talent there is in the world. Imagine how many grocery baggers there are who work full-time grocery bagging or whatever, who if you were to just not make them do that and let them sit in the room, they would create some kind of crazy magical thing that nobody's thought about. Or they would just be extremely talented in memorizing history or something, or they would have historical insights and, lead to some kind of scientific in discovery or an invention or something like that. That's what we need to foster. When you create, I mean, just look at the natural world. When you create all these new organisms pop up and it just, and so that's what happens if you give UBI to people. But how do you maintain control? Now, the reason that I'm saying that is I'm referring to Aristotle and Plato. They talk about the cycles of the five governments, where government is always cycling between a kingdom, like an autocratic kingdom, where somebody settles and they have their great leader, and then he's a leader until he dies, and then he passes his leadership off to his son because everybody loves the son, and then he passes it off to his son, but his son's kind of a spoiled brat, and so now they've got it, but so it goes from a kingdom to a aristocracy, where it's an aristocracy is ruled by the qualified and the smart, like the philosopher kings. And according to Plato and Aristotle, that was actually the very best form of government, better than democracy. Democracy is not the worst, but it's kind of it's not the best. It's below. Tyranny is the worst. It's below aristocracy. So then it's kingdom. The first king, and then you have aristocracy, but then his grandkids, they get kind of progressively get more and more spoiled and classist. So then it turns into an oligarchy where it's just the rich get against the poor, and then the poor have a revolution, so it becomes a democracy because everyone wants to say. But then democracy has its own problems, which then causes them to have to revert back to an autocratic system of a king. That's where they go into a demagogue who then creates a kingdom, and that's the cycle that we're in right now. We're in the cycle from transferring from a oligarchy to a straight democracy, if you wanted to look at it in loose terms, because we got our demagogue in there, and now people are kind of running wild and saying whatever the hell they want and trying to super invent all of the laws, like trying to add extra term limits and all this crazy shit, having all absolute power. And so when you devolve into a democracy, let me talk about the bad things about democracy, because people these days don't really know about it, but the Greeks did, because every single city state was a new city state, so you could see everything. And in a democracy, really ugly stuff starts happening, like slaves start bullying on rich people, like slaves start refusing to get out of the way of a rich person because they think that means equality, means being rude, because the word rude, original term for rude, meant like the outback person who they don't have to be polite, and they can just kind of be themselves and be nasty, because it doesn't really matter, because it's just the only influence they have is just them, and they kind of have to self-police themselves and all this kind of stuff. But if you and then the original term for polite, the opposite of rude, is the people who are in the king's court. And whenever you're in the king's court, you have to treat everybody with respect, because it's kind of like a competition within the king's court, whoever can be the most kingly. They're dressed nicely, they've gotten well coiffed hair, and so along with that, they speak with proper speaking, and so then they're very diplomatic, so that you can kind of prove that you're the most worthy to be in there. And that's why people are kind of who are educated and are just naturally polite, and the other people are rude. So then rudeness kind of becomes the norm in a democracy, and so people think that they're standing up for themselves against those rich people who they hate by pushing them out of the way on the trail and maybe even mugging people, and it just devolves into this like gangster society. Whoever's the strongest and has the most friends and the most kids who kick your ass become the powerful, and so then you need somebody to rein it all in. That's where you have your demagogue, and then you switch back from a democracy to a tyranny. and then they have to make the cycle back where they create the aristocracy again. So what's an aristocracy? An aristocracy is rule by the best. So in order, if you're going to have a rule by the best, that means you have to set up a system that rewards the best. And Plato was saying that when you set up a system that rewards the best, that's why you have titles. You know, I bequeath the title of knight unto you, because when you bequeath titles unto people, you know, and then you give people special, privileges and special you know, support publicly, you know, like rewards and stuff. That rewards people and motivates people to be better, but in a way that doesn't cost money. It's free. It's like printing free money, only without creating inflation. When you reward people with something that everybody wants, yet doesn't cost any money. So that's why it's a great idea to give bequeath titles. So then that means you have to set up a system where you can separate the wheat from the chaff. You know, so you can have absolute freedom from all, yet you know the difference between right and wrong, and you can still enforce politeness and keep the rude people off to the side where they can't do too much damage. And so that's, I think, going to become more appropriate in the future. You know, when we have all of this, everybody can say whatever they want online. You know, no more restrictions on cussing, no more restrictions on talking trash about people. Slander laws have to get like reduced and deleted. Intellectual property rights is going to have to go away, because the Chinese are kicking the shit out of us right now in technology because they don't have intellectual property rights. I saw this documentary. There's this town called. There's this big city that just popped up out of nowhere. It was a fishing village. Now it's got like 10 million people. And if you want to go and create a new device, you have to go to China, because you can just buy stuff, and if somebody builds stuff, you can just steal it off of them, and then you can build something else. And it's the perfect formula to grow rapid invention and entrepreneurship, when not everybody's wasting our money and time suing each other for intellectual property rights. We're getting stuck in the mud over here while they're taking off. And it's the same thing with creativity, Western style creativity, which we still ahead of anywhere else in the world, America. But how do you keep it civilized, where people can't like attack somebody and make up stories about somebody, and then they get to make everybody believe it because they have more followers, because they like bought more followers or something. And so then you can kind of, like, people like Ben Shapiro could squash somebody like me because he could say I don't know anything and I'm an idiot just because I don't have as many followers as he does, and then everybody goes along and is like, yeah, for sure, I get it, yeah. And like people like Joe Rogan could be like, ha ha, look at Biden stuttering, he's an idiot then, ha ha, Trump for president. And then everybody's like, yeah. So that's going to devolve into a straight democracy, like a bad form of democracy, where might makes right, and then we're going to have to rein it all in. But then they're going to rein it all in an autocratic way, where people get sick of people bullying each other, so then they make laws that just get way too constricted. So in order to avoid having this, like, people just swimming around not knowing, just people being assholes thinking that they're being free, how do you have a keep the point moral compass pointed north? And that's I think that's by setting up a system where we all know, where we all where the better person you are depends on how hard you work. You have to work for it with all of your spare time. I mean, if you want to get your $1,000 a month and sit on your ass, then that's fine. You can get your $1,000 a month, but don't expect to get $1,000 a month, sit on your ass, and then become president. You have to work for it. So the question is, what do you have to work for? Because People are kind of freaked out about the UBI thing. They're like, oh, but what about the third world is coming? They're going to want to take advantage, just take the money, and then we'll run out of money and everything. But what I'm talking about is worldwide. We would start in America and protect Americans, and then it spreads out once they see how we're doing it. That way we don't even have to have a military, because we just make ourselves the shining light on the hill, and then the Middle Easterners in Iran will have their own revolution, and the people in North Korea will have their own revolution because because we will be shining so bright on our own right. And so how do we shine bright on our own right? You have to create a system where you have to work for something, but what you have to work for is knowledge. Knowledge. But what kind of knowledge? Not business knowledge, because business knowledge is something that just helps you. Like entrepreneurial knowledge. It's like, oh, how do you make a business for yourself? That just helps you. But how do you help yourself in a way that also helps everybody else? If you're like Mr. Entrepreneurial guy, there's only enough space for that doesn't create enough space for everybody. There's still that's a model that keeps that the higher up you go, there's less space. But you need a model up where the higher up you go, there's still space for everybody, and then you can imagine a world where everybody is up at that level, and then that's your utopia. Now, if you're thinking like an entrepreneur with business knowledge and stuff, I mean, think of a world where robots take care of everything. If robots take care of everything, why would you need any entrepreneurs or business people or anything? It's the robots that do it. So that's not the kind of knowledge that we need to have as the highest value. Philosophers all since the beginning of time have always talked about high value knowledge versus lower value knowledge. Plato talked about it. If I can remember any places, I'll put the link below. So high value knowledge is history. That's what high value knowledge is, because you can't make money off of teaching history, and you shouldn't make money off of teaching history, because life isn't about making money. Life is about being a good example to people and teaching people and knowing the best thing. I mean, you could make knowledge off of history, I guess, if you get a bunch of hits on your videos, and then you get money from the ads on your videos. But the main thing that showing knowledge on your history does is give you that society status that doesn't cost anybody any money, and that's what you want. Entrepreneurial society status costs money because there's only enough space for people at the top, for a few number of people at the top. But knowledge is open to any and everybody, and that's the way that God designed the world. Is everybody equal? We all live the same amount of time. We all have the same strengths, physical strength and mental strength. We're all equal, for the most part. The difference in everybody has to do with how hard you try in yourself, and so that's how we want to mimic. We want to mimic God, and so you try for historical knowledge. And so how do you set up a system where where there's actually a stratified historical knowledge that's independent and doesn't rely on teachers like your traditional school system? Because if you do that with traditional school system teachers, you get a bunch of idiot teachers, and then the teacher just decides who they like and who they don't like, and then they kick out the people who are the smartest, like me. There's a saying, A students in school turn into people who work for the B students. The B students end up working for the C students, and the D students end up having buildings dedicated in their name. Because all school is how much of a butt licker you are, and if you're too smart, then the teacher gets butthurt and wants to get revenge. And I mean, that's why I got kicked out of school. So how do you set up a system that stratifies, takes advantage of the natural differences in human beings, yet preserves our equality that we all have? And that's by you have to set up a system of historical knowledge that's completely independent of original people's arbitrary judgments. So you have to set up like a system. And so the system that I propose is I think we have to put the highest of value on historical knowledge, but general historical knowledge, because what general historical knowledge does is it creates a spectrum of knowledge for people, so that you actually expose who you are, and that's data. You're giving forth the truth about what's actually going on. create as much data as you possibly can. You know, that's how Jeff Bezos became so popular, is because he figured out computer scientists, how to get everybody's data. And so that's why broad spectrum historical knowledge is the best way to do it. So everybody takes the same history, the same test, and and uh, and we all have the same responsibility. So okay, so what's the test? This is the test. This is my idea. You have a test, and I call it the biweekly history test, because you would take it every 2 weeks on the dot, every 2 weeks. The reason you would take it every 2 weeks is because then you can trace somebody's progress on a regular time frame, and or degression. Because the fact of the matter is, once you get older, then you start to forget, and then we could judge, we could record exactly how people get dumber, and in what ways. So you take a biweekly history test. So what's that? It's and you can see it on my website. I'll put the link below. It's a random number generator, and you just hit the random number generator, and then you all prove it, how it works. You just wear a blindfold. You hit the button, and it says, and you would take, say, the all of history. So you hit a random number generator, and then it says, okay, place 200 million to 100 million years ago. So then you have to say what you know about the 200 million, 100 million years ago. Or if you choose the 20th century one, you can have them. You can have the general history test, or you could just have the 20th century. You could have AD, you could have BC, you could have ancient history, and then of course general history. And you can also have future. That's definitely important as well. So if it's the AD, then you would have it in terms of decades. So you go, okay, hit this one, and then it tells you, okay, the 1230s. Tell me what you know about the 1230s. And you get 1 minute to say what you know about the 1230s. And then it's over. And then you hit the button again. Okay, 1370s. And then you get 1 minute to say the 1370s. And you do 60 of them. So you do it for 1 hour. And then you spend the time after that to grade yourself based on Wikipedia. You get a point based on which thing that aligns. Whatever you say, if it's on Wikipedia, you get a point. And then at the end of the day, it's how many points you get. And then you do your tally of points. Every 2 weeks you do your tally of points. And then you put that up on your website in a grid system, so everybody can speed read and see it. Now, that's another video. And so if you want to know somebody's mental profile, you just go on their website and you see what their score was on all their different random number generator biweekly history tests, and then you're going to know where they're smart, what they're not smart at, and see that's going to have all sorts of bonuses in society. One of them is it makes people less judgmental, because if you're not afraid to get out there and prove that you're dumb, then you're going to be a whole lot less judgmental against other people. And if people attack you for thinking that you're dumb because you didn't get one thing, you're good at this thing, but you happen to get the thing chose you things decades that you don't know about, then you can just challenge the other person who told you that you're an idiot to do their test then, or just tell them they're an idiot for not taking the test at all, and that if they did take the test, you beat them or something like that. And then they would take the test, and then they would get slammed, because everybody's going to get slammed. Nobody has complete knowledge, because we live in 2020. But imagine, and that's why we can believe that in 500 years everybody will know everything. The higher you shoot, the quicker you can get there. They had to design rockets that get out of the gravitational field. If they had a design rocket that only gets 10,000 feet up, it'd fall down, they die. So it's the same thing. You have to, at the beginning, go, okay, it is possible for humans to remember everything. I think it's possible for humans to remember all of history. If you take the history test, and it gives you, hey, give me this 10 million slot of history. You just know, because everybody knows, and so and whenever you take the test, you know where your weaknesses are. So then you study up on your weaknesses, and so then it helps you become a more well-rounded person. And when you're a more well-rounded person mentally, you become a more well-rounded person generally. With your personalities, the kind of people you can communicate with, and it'll bring everybody together that way. So and also it helps people learn we all learn from each other. We all have different insights. So if you want to you could just learn people's biweekly history tests, or listen to other people's biweekly history tests, and when they don't do well on a decade, you go, oh, I know that one, I know that one. And so you're exercising your brain, and then when they do a decade, they're better than you go, oh man, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. And then you get to experience somebody's vibe. You get to communicate with people, but it's on the absolute highest intellectual level, where you're only talking about history. People like to share each other, like on TikTok they're dancing. I love TikTok, little kids dancing and stuff, but we should also have people not just sharing how we dance and our dance moves, but we should have people sharing our levels of knowledge and our depth of knowledge and our range of knowledge. And so when we all do that, we can have the levels of knowledge. That means the people who know the best about history are the highest up on the level, on the totem pole. Those are the people who would get to run for office. Those are the people who would get more money from the ads because their videos get more hits. Those are the people who can walk around, acting cockier, in society, and just and have the most friends, and that'll keep the crazy people at bay. When you have a crazy lunatic who otherwise, if you don't have the system, would be like, yeah, like da da da, motherfucker, like like mermaids and fucking just making up shit. The aliens are here with and I mean, I believe in aliens, but people would just get crazy, like get all sci-fi with it, like I know this and that, and blah, 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 and I'm smarter than you because I make more money with the business and all this kind of stuff. Like some idiot couldn't do that because they'd take the biochemistry test and they'd be like, oh, like what? Like what's the point? Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they don't do well, and the only way to do well is to actually study. And so this is a common knowledge. When you study common knowledge, stuff that's on Wikipedia, stuff that's scientifically backed up, nobody can refute whether it's true or not true when you have a system like that. When you don't have a system, then it's harder to know what's true and what's good and what's not good. That's the world we live in now. We've got all these people who they think that they're the smartest just because they have the biggest money. Can anybody say Donald Trump? You know, and so that's the balance. That's how you can protect yourself against barbarians, third world barbarians. You can, I mean, one way to protect from third world barbarians is coming to America and mugging and attacking people and ripping people off, is by having a strong police force and who have enough resources to go after and throw people in jail and for doing that kind of stuff. But there's another way to enforce people to act right and be polite with each other and to be knowledgeable, and that's by creating a culture of uploading what you know on the internet, on YouTube, all the time, every day. Every day. People are coming up with new technology to have more gigabyte storage, so don't worry about the gigabyte storage. And if it turns out that we don't have as much gigabyte storage as we need because everybody starts doing it, then at that point you start deleting videos of the people who do silly stuff. Like the people dancing around and showing off their Ferraris, or just showing their dog dancing, or cute animal videos, or just the extraneous stuff. And then you only allow space for the people who are doing the biweekly history test. And if you still have a constriction, then you would only have space on the internet for the people who score the highest on the biweekly history test. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case anyway, because people are learning new techniques of like atomic memory and all this kind of stuff. There's like 6 different ways they're developing new memory on their for computers. So new data storage. So that's how you would have a democracy, the best type of democracy, where it's ruled by everybody has a voice and everybody has the same voice in voting. Yet it's a system where it's ruled by the smartest. It's the aristocracy, which the Greeks thought was the very best form. Ruled by the very smartest people. And so Donald Trump, if he's going to run for president or whatever, he already has to have had a bunch of educational videos on YouTube showing that they have a wide range of knowledge. Currently, and that's what my whole point, because currently we don't have that system set up. Not a single person who runs for president or wants to, or is talking about running for president, or runs for other like a governor or whatever, that's not on the table. Nobody says, oh, but where's your videos talking about something? They don't have to, but it's going in that direction. Because 10 years ago, nobody had to have a YouTube video. But now if you have a YouTube video, that's great social clout. A lot of business people have YouTube videos. But so then what's the next step? More YouTube videos? Well, what kind of YouTube videos? Pretty soon, if everybody has YouTube videos showing their cat and just sharing their little random philosophical ideas about stuff, we're eventually going to get to the point where we're going to be like, okay, let's get a system going here, though. Let's actually have focus and talk about, there's the kind of videos that people actually want to see, that's educational, and that's all on the same level playing field. Not just say what you think about this because you're hanging out with this group of people and this is what you guys are saying, but what are you saying about the common overall overarching conversation that we've had since the beginning of time? What do so everybody has to know exactly what all the historians from past said. Not just what the new fad who wrote the book last year said. I was saying in my other video yesterday that if you go to Blinkist, all those Blinkists of the videos or books that are written by people just 10, 20 years ago, it's like 70, 50,000 hits. But if you go to the books of written by Plato and Aristotle on like books that have websites that have counters on them, like my website, or Archive and Gutenberg that have counters, you look on those sites and it's just less than 100 hits per book because nobody cares. So that shows how we're not set up yet, and that's the direction that we're going because people are getting more and more used to sharing themselves, and so that's gonna move into sharing themselves about knowledge, and then it's gonna be about historical knowledge, and it's gonna be about common historical knowledge, and then it's gonna be about your spectrum, what you're good at and what you're not good at. And then we'll realize, there's just some people who specialize in some things, but we can all be generally knowledgeable of everything. There's a saying called "Jack of all trades, master of none." I think it started with somebody accusing William Shakespeare of being a jack of all trades, master of none, but that's always been a derogatory term. Like, oh, last thing you want to be is a jack of all trades, master of none, because that means, everybody will hire the specialist because he can charge the most and he's the best, and you're kind of regulated to be kind of like that would be a good position to have if you live in the backwoods with a little village in the mountains with 60 people. But what if you live in a big city? You'll kind of get pushed off into the side, and there'll be no place for you. And because it's just too difficult, you just can't do it. But you can do it now. Now's the time, and we're entering in the dawn of a new age where you can be a jack of all trades, master of all trades. You could be the best at the worst scientific historical knowledge area that you have, you're still going to be better than the very best at somebody 100 years ago. And then you fast forward another 100 years, you'll just be totally omniscient at everything. The human brain, if you use the mind castle technique, has infinite knowledge pretty much. Mind castle technique has to do with connecting meaning to everything, and then so when you have a story behind everything, you have a meaning to it, then it helps you remember. So let me just explain the mind castle technique really quick. So the idea is that you can remember anything, because as long as you add a story to it. So if you go into your house and you go, okay, that's the TV. Oh, TV starts with T. I want to remember Tom. So whenever I look at the TV, it says Tom. I can't remember exactly how to explain it right now, but see, that's just kind of like brain candy. That's like mental masturbation when you're just trying to memorize stuff. But what if you, for example, there's the woman. There's people who remember every single event of their life. They have really good memory, and I guess there's only 6 of them in the world now. And if you give them a date like July 2nd, 1973, they'll be able to tell you what they were dressed in, who they were talking to, and what they were doing. And it's kind of like a mind castle thing, because they just keep because they use one thing to remember them about another thing, and then that reminds them of another thing, and then that reminds them of another thing. So they're using a technique of everything tied together to help them remember. But it's still mental masturbation, because who gives a shit about your own personal life? You're just a person. Now, why aren't one of those 6 people in the world using their superior mental powers and their mind castle techniques to actually learn something useful, to learn history? Where's the person who has all of history memorized? I haven't heard of that person. How come that person doesn't exist? How come you can remember everything, every single thing in your life, yet not know anything of history? Well, it's because your priorities in the wrong place, and you're not focusing. So we need to change our focus on history by creating a system where everybody has to study history that way. And Mind Castle would actually work stronger on history than anything else, because history actually is connected to everything else in an actual very real way with evolution. You know, the mouse turns into the shrew, shrew turns into the monkey, monkey turns into the gorilla, gorilla turns into the person. You know, it's all connected. And then shrew lived in this world, and the shrew was designed like the shrew because he was in like an African environment with a warm environment with lots of trees he could hike over, and he had to hide from the dinosaurs. It's all connected. The weather was like this because it happened like this because it happened like this. So it's natural. It's natural mind castle connecting everything in your face without even trying to create mind castle. So that's why having a wide range of knowledge will actually help you in your general knowledge, even if it seems overwhelming in the beginning. All you do is focus on your weaknesses. Like with triathletes. If a triathlete is super good at the biking but slow in the swimming, and fast in the running, well, then they would swim extra. You're always trying to strengthen your weakness, and it's the same thing with history. Just always trying to strengthen your weakness, and if you're always trying to strengthen your weakness, then that weakness gets strengthened. But at the same time, you're strengthening everything else because everything's connected. And then it's eventually come to a point where everything connects enough that, boom, the floodgates open, and then you're just omniscient, especially when everybody's doing 100th monkey. Have you ever heard of the 100th monkey theory? There's this theory back in, there's this island in Japan, and they taught the monkeys how to bust open the coconut with a rock. So then all the monkeys did it because they learned each other. But then somehow the monkeys on the other island started doing it because they're all part of monkey world. And somehow they like in the dream time or something, it psychically transferred over to the other monkeys. Maybe the monkey died and then reincarnated as the other monkey in the other island. Same thing with humans. If all humans are reasonably omniscient, it's going to be a whole lot easier for the next generation to be completely omniscient, because it's just common knowledge that you know everything, and everybody's talking about it at the dinner table. People are talking about history, and that's what smart people do. Smart people get together at the dinner table, and then they're just sharing knowledge. That's basically what a conversation is. But stupid people do it too. They just share stupid knowledge. So what we need to do is artificially create a system where only the highest end knowledge is rewarded, and all that lower end knowledge is used just for people's own personal gain and just because you want to. So you kind of ignore entrepreneurial. People should stop reading entrepreneurial books and self-help books. We should be beyond that by now. We should all know that believe in yourself or whatever, and that it's all possible or whatever, and all this, that, and the next thing. We should all start focusing on learning history. Like when I get up on Blinkist, or I get up on YouTube and I watch something, I try to avoid watching people try to do self-help or this or that, because it's not actual knowledge. It doesn't plug into anything. If you want something that plugs into something, do history, because history is the real world, which it's cause and effect, one thing next to another. So it's the biweekly history test, but it's also just general, also reviews of history books. If you do a review of a history book, then you're also strengthening your brain by remembering, putting to words what's in your head strengthens, teaching other people, and you're also exposing your depth of knowledge and your range of knowledge. Certain people are gonna pick up on certain things, and so then that kind of shares who you are. You'll share more who you are just by talking about history for a half hour than you could ever do by dancing around and flexing your muscles and showing people who your friends are and where you've been. Like that's just a tiny fraction of who you are compared to your mind and what you know? Like what would I rather if I'm like interested in say in somebody, say like a super hot chick, okay? I'm like, ooh, that bitch is fine, big titties. Now, what would I rather if I wanted to like know more about her? Like, say I was single and she happened to live in my hometown, and I was like, and I had a bunch of money, and I was like, actually thought that I could get her. I'm interested in her. I got a call which got me distracted, and then I couldn't get back on track. I forgot what I was talking about. Wish this phone could get programmed where phone people can't interrupt you with the phone calls, man. Let me put the do not disturb on the phone. Come on, people. What I was saying was, you know, you can share much more of yourself with your mind than you can any other way. All these people out there on like Instagram and like I don't know, like um, um, I guess that's the most. And then if you're on a YouTube, then it's just like shallow stuff, you know. Look at me looking at something else or something. Watch me dance or flex or whatever. But okay, so assuming you want to know somebody, you're interested in a person, like you're interested in some super hot chick. Now, would I rather have access to like all of some super hot chick's photos and know about her friends and know what job she has and know what she owns and all that kind of stuff, even like naked videos, okay? Add all that kind of stuff together. Would I rather have a collection, 500 gigabyte collection of all that stuff, or would I rather have a video like a few videos of her talking and philosophizing over the course of maybe a couple of hours? I choose for the philosophizing. You can choose. You can share a lot more of yourself just from talking. But who does that? Nobody talks. You know, if you're like, hey, what's that? Even super famous people who are in positions of power, like politicians. What if you wanted to know about AOC? Ooh, AOC's hot. What's the deal with AOC? Good luck. You ain't gonna know because there's no videos of them talking. Obviously there's videos all over the place of them talking, but it's only about like the subject, the political subject. What if you want to know about what they thought about religion? What if we want to know what they thought about what their depth of knowledge of history is? Nobody has that, and nobody has to have it. That's my point. But that should be a requirement. Is your ideas about stuff, and so. But it's better if you just set up a system where everybody has to talk about everything, because then you're going to know what their range is, and and that's what's going to keep everybody in line. That's what's going to put the freeze on the cycle that keeps bouncing you back and forth between you know having too much control from the government telling you you can't do anything, and then now you have freedoms, and then people walk all over each other, so then you have to regulate, but then you have to make free, but then you realize that people cheat, and it's just like that's really expensive when you have like systems overlooking people and making laws and regulations. Just tell everybody they regulate themselves by uploading the video, and then boom, everybody has to take the same exact test, and then you know. And if they don't take the test, then they're frowned upon because that's a society. That's the way. That's where we need to do these days. And that's why I'm setting up my system. And some people be like, well, Kyle, you're not doing videos. You're not taking your history test. That's because I have too many different things going on my site. You know, I can't, like, I consider myself at heart, I would love to be an athlete. You know, I identify with those athlete people. Yet I'm not actually an athlete because I just don't have the time, you know? Like, just because I haven't written on my website yet, or I only have rough draft versions of writing on my website, doesn't mean I'm a bad writer. It just means my rough draft version's on my website, you know? You have to assume that everybody can do everything equally. But in order to do that, you have to achieve award the time. In order to award the time, you have to pay people to to do that stuff, you know. And if you can't pay them with money, you pay them with social clout by by well, giving money is a good way. That's why to get UBI started, instead of just giving everybody $1,000, why don't you give $1,000 to people who upload educational videos or something like that? Anyways, I babbled on enough. I'll put the links below, and I don't really have a leg to stand on until I do the test myself. I actually did the test once, but something happened with my machinery. Like I think the battery died on my computer or something. But I did take the test, and I was getting my ass kicked, boy, because history is big. I mean, name a single person. Everybody likes to say Elon Musk is Mr. Smarty Pants. Ask Elon Musk what happened in the year 998 BC. Ask him what happened in the decade of 1310. He's not going to know, but he should. And his grandchildren probably will. That's what I'm saying. So tell your kids, since they're tiny little kids, tell them, look, it's your destiny to memorize every single thing that ever happened in history. Every single thing, like a computer, without even having to look in the phone. You just say, and then, because and then once you plug that in, what's that going to connect to? Maybe that'll open up even more doors. So, okay, that's enough talking. Talk to you tomorrow.